Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself kind of caught in these recurring patterns? Like behaviors that feel almost automatic,
hmm
or struggles that seem impossible to break free from, even when, like, your rational mind totally knows better.
Yeah, that feeling of being stuck.
Exactly. It's as if there's some unseen force pulling the strings, guiding your reactions and choices without your conscious uh, consent, really.
It really can feel like that, like fate almost.
Right. And the psychologist Carl Jung, he put it brilliantly, didn't he? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
That really sums it up.
So today, we're embarking on a journey into that unseen force. We're going to explore the intricate connection between your psyche and, well, your perception of the world, how you quite literally see and engage with life.
How the inner world shapes the outer experience.
Precisely. But first, a gentle but really important note before we dive in.
Yes, a quick heads up.
Today's deep dive touches on some sensitive topics. We'll be talking about trauma, psychological pain, addiction, things like that.
Yeah, potentially difficult subjects.
And while our mission is really to provide understanding and insightful frameworks for these complex issues, this discussion is absolutely not a substitute for professional therapy or medical advice.
Definitely not. This is about understanding, not treatment itself.
So if anything we discuss today resonates deeply, or maybe triggers difficult emotions or causes any distress, please consider seeking support from a qualified mental health professional. Your well-being is paramount.
Absolutely. What we're trying to do here is explore the profound why behind some of these persistent patterns.
Getting to the root cause.
Exactly. Our aim isn't to prescribe, quick fix solutions, but really to illuminate the underlying mechanisms. We want to shed some light on how our past experiences, particularly those involving unresolved trauma, can profoundly shape our present-day struggles.
How the past isn't really past sometimes.
Right. We'll be looking at how our brains and our bodies respond to overwhelming, life-altering situations. And critically, how those very responses can kind of paradoxically lead us toward behaviors that offer temporary, fleeting relief, but ultimately long-term suffering.
That's the tricky part, the short-term fix versus the long-term cost.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to cut through the noise, right? To move beyond simple labels and give you a clearer lens to understand these intricate patterns. We really want to offer you a shortcut to being better informed about that powerful, often hidden connection between your inner world, your psyche, and how you perceive and engage with the world around you.
Making the unconscious a little more conscious, as you said.
Exactly. Let's do that.
Okay, so when we talk about trauma, I think it's pretty common for our minds to immediately jump to, catastrophic events, big headline-grabbing stuff.
Yeah, the big T traumas, right? Like combat, major accidents.
Exactly. Combat experiences, maybe torture, major accidents, natural disasters, and yes, those were undeniably traumatic. But the core definition of trauma actually extends far beyond the specific event itself.
Okay, so what's the essence then?
Fundamentally, trauma is about the experience of uncontrollable stress, coupled with that really profound subjective feeling of helplessness.
Helplessness, that's key.
It is the sense that your life is in danger, whether physically or, psychologically, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to escape it. This feeling of utter powerlessness, this perceived lack of agency when facing an overwhelming threat, that is precisely where the brain changes begin to occur.
Wow. So it's not just what happened, but the internal, visceral experience of it that leaves the lasting imprint.
That's it.
It's fascinating how that distinction between the event itself and our internal experience of powerlessness during it completely reframes how we understand trauma.
Yeah.
So, in a way, it's not the monster itself, but the feeling of being utterly defenseless against it that truly leaves the lasting mark.
That clarifies it perfectly. That makes so much sense. It explains why two people could go through the exact same challenging situation, maybe a car accident or something, and one might develop trauma symptoms while the other doesn't. It's that subjective feeling of having no control.
That's a crucial distinction, absolutely, because it means our nervous system responds to perceived threat and helplessness, not just, objective danger.
Right. Perception is reality for the nervous system.
Furthermore, even experiences that might seem less severe, what people sometimes call little t traumas, can have equally profound and, frankly, debilitating effects.
Okay, what falls under little t?
Well, these aren't minor incidents necessarily. They're often chronic, or they happen during critical developmental periods, subtly but powerfully rewiring the brain. Imagine, say, a child growing up in a home environment that's consistently critical or emotionally volatile or just really unpredictable.
Okay, like walking on eggshells all the time. Exactly. Or perhaps there was a parent who was always absent, either physically or emotionally, leading to chronic emotional neglect. Or maybe a caregiver who was consistently dismissive of their child's feelings.
Yeah, that invalidation.
Right. These repeated smaller moments of helplessness where the child's fundamental need for safety and connection is just consistently unmet, they can accumulate. And they don't just add up, they subtly reprogram the nervous system and the brain just as significant, maybe even more insidiously, than a single major event.
So the body really does keep a quiet score of these everyday lacks of safety.
It absolutely does.
What's truly foundational to understanding all of this, I think, is how our brains are actually built. Our higher thinking, our rational thought and language, it isn't some separate, pristine system floating above everything else.
No, not at all.
Instead, it's an elaboration, right, of much older, more ancient parts. Our brains literally evolved from the bottom up, with these older primal centers forming the very foundation upon which our more sophisticated cognitive abilities are layered.
Exactly right. And at the very core of this ancient structure is the limbic system. You might hear it called the mammalian brain, and that's for good reason.
Why mammalian?
Well, virtually all mammals, especially those that live in groups and nurture their young, possess a well-developed one. And here's a critical point. This part of our brain truly takes off in its development after a baby is born, and it's shaped profoundly by those early relationships.
Ah, so it learns from experience right from the start.
Yes. It's not just the seat of our emotions, it's the vigilant monitor of danger in our environment. It's the ultimate arbiter of what we perceive as pleasurable or scary, which is essential for basic survival. But more profoundly, it acts as a central command post for navigating the incredibly complex waters of our social world, deciding who is safe, who is threatening, and how we should respond.
So our emotional brain is constantly scanning for threats, almost like a built-in radar system, making predictions without us even realizing it.
Precisely. It's always on alert, making predictions about what's coming next, often based, of course, on past experiences. But here's the crucial, often overlooked point. Trauma doesn't just register an event, it recalibrates this entire system.
Recalibrates? How?
It fundamentally changes how our brain operates on a physiological level. We see an immediate and often prolonged increase in stress hormone activity, things like cortisol and adrenaline, which keeps the body in a state of high alert.
Constantly stressed out, basically.
Yeah, physically. And this also alters how we filter incoming information. It makes us disproportionately sensitive to perceived threats while often missing other crucial, more benign details in the environment.
Tunnel vision for danger.
Sort of. It can even compromise the very brain area that communicates the physical, embodied feeling of being alive and connected to oneself, what scientists call interoception.
So you feel less connected to your own body.
In a way, yes. Or the signals get misinterpreted. This explains why traumatized individuals often become hypervigilant to threats, constantly on edge, scanning their environment for danger, but at the expense of spontaneously engaging in the daily flow of life or even enjoying simple
It
pleasures.
sounds exhausting.
It is. Their brain is essentially stuck in a perpetual alarm mode. And this can make it incredibly difficult to learn from new positive experiences, which leads to that frustrating cycle of repeating the same problems. Their seemingly irrational behaviors, then, aren't moral failings or a lack of willpower. They're the direct, often unavoidable result of these profound brain changes. To make this a bit more concrete, think of the amygdala as your brain's smoke detector.
Okay, the smoke detector. Always listening for trouble.
Exactly. It's always on alert, scanning for the slightest hint of danger. It's the part that gets instantly activated by that sudden, gut-wrenching sense of being endangered, whether the threat is physical or, more often, maybe a symbolic threat to self-esteem, dignity, or safety, like being unexpectedly insulted or deeply frustrated.
Right, that immediate gut reaction.
Now, the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC, that's like your brain's calm, rational CEO, or maybe the watchtower, giving context.
Watchtower, okay. Overseeing things.
Its job is to provide context, to assess the situation. Is this really a bear or just a shadow? And to help regulate your emotional responses, deciding if that smoke detector alarm is a real fire or just someone burning toast.
Okay, so it calms the smoke detector down if it's a false alarm.
Exactly. It's the part that helps you pause and think instead of just reacting instinctively.
So in trauma, that vital balance, that internal checks and balances system is significantly off.
Significantly, yeah. In conditions like PTSD, this critical balance shifts radically. The amygdala becomes overly reactive, hypersensitive to any potential threat.
The smoke detector is going off constantly.
Right. While the MPFC's ability to regulate those intense emotional responses is severely diminished,
The watchtower isn't really watching effectively.
or its messages aren't getting through clearly. Neuroimaging studies of people in highly emotional states, whether it's intense fear, sadness, or overwhelming anger, consistently show increased activation in these deeper subcortical brain regions, precisely while activity in the frontal lobe, especially that crucial MPFC, is significantly reduced.
So the emotional brain takes over, the rational brain kind of shuts down.
It's like your brain's emergency override system kicks in, shutting down rational control. When that happens, the inhibitory capacities of the frontal lobe simply break down, and people can literally take leave of their senses.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, you might witness them startle violently from a loud sound that others barely notice, or become disproportionately enraged by minor frustrations that would normally be trivial, or even freeze completely and become unresponsive when someone simply touches them unexpectedly.
Wow.
Their internal alarm system is effectively stuck in the on position, constantly blaring, overriding their higher reasoning and rational thought.
So these aren't just mental shifts, but profound, deeply embedded physical ones too. What about those primal responses we often hear about? Fight, flight, and freeze. How do those play out when the body is truly keeping score, remembering these experiences on a cellular level?
Yeah, these are deeply ingrained evolutionary responses, critical for survival. When we perceive a threat, anger, for instance, triggers an immediate rush of stress hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline, often referred to as catecholamines.
The fight or flight chemicals.
Right. These powerful chemicals flood your system, generating a quick episodic surge of energy, enough for vigorous action, either to fight off the perceived danger, to defend oneself, or to flee from it with all your might. But beyond these active responses, trauma also profoundly leads to another, often misunderstood and even more insidious state: dissociation.
Dissociation, I've heard that term. What exactly is it?
Dissociation is, in many ways, the very essence of trauma itself. When an overwhelmingly frightening or painful experience occurs, it isn't properly assembled into a coherent, linear story in our autobiographical memory.
So the memory gets fragmented.
Exactly. The different sensations, emotions, thoughts, even fragmented images from that moment get split off or dissociated from the conscious narrative. This means that people might relive an incident with all its original physical and emotional intensity. The distinct smells, the jarring sounds, the visceral dread, as if it's happening right now in the present moment.
Not just remembering it, but experiencing it again.
Yes, rather than simply remembering it as something that occurred in the distant past. It's like their brain is replaying the raw, unprocessed data on a continuous loop without filing it away in the past where it belongs.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be. And this phenomenon also explains why language alone often isn't enough to resolve these deeply encoded visceral experiences. They seem to bypass the rational verbal centers of the brain. Our research has shown that while telling a coherent story can certainly lessen isolation and provide some intellectual explanation, it doesn't always abolish flashbacks or improve concentration on its own.
So talking about it helps, but might not fix the physical reliving part.
It's often not sufficient on its own, no. The body's memory, in a sense, operates somewhat independently.
It sounds incredibly isolating to be stuck reliving something in your body, perpetually trapped in that moment of helplessness, unable to just remember it and genuinely move on. It's as if a part of you is still frozen in time.
It is a very isolating experience. And while fight, flight, or freeze are well-known responses to acute, immediate threat, other more complex adaptive behaviors emerge, particularly from chronic, ongoing trauma, especially when it occurs in early life.
Like what?
For instance, children who come from consistently critical, threatening, or harsh home environments may grow up lacking concern for playmates' distress. They might be aggressive, unpopular with peers, prone to depression, and in some cases, even engage in criminal behavior as adults.
So their early environment shapes their social interactions later on.
Profoundly. Their early experiences often teach them to put up a tough, impenetrable front to cover their underlying fear and vulnerability, or conversely, to withdraw and spend more time alone, which understandably hinders the development of crucial interpersonal skills.
Are some of these what we might call fawning behaviors, where someone unconsciously tries to appease or blend in to avoid conflict or further harm, perhaps even becoming a people pleaser to ensure safety.
Yes, fawn is absolutely one such adaptation, and it's critical to understand its nuances. It's that attempt to appease the threat to survive.
Yeah.
And there's more to it. For instance, consider insecurely attached infants whose primary caregivers are consistently unresponsive or rejecting. They learn to deal with their anxiety in two distinct ways. Some become chronically upset and demanding with their mothers, constantly seeking attention and reassurance.
Okay, the protest behavior.
Yes. While others become passive and withdrawn, outwardly appearing unaffected. In both cases, simply making contact with the mother often fails to truly settle them down. They don't return to contented play.
Still distressed underneath.
In what's termed avoidant attachment, infants might seem outwardly unaffected, not crying when their mother leaves and appearing to ignore her when she returns. However, physiological measures often reveal their chronically increased heart rates, indicating they are in a constant state of hyperarousal, a pattern my colleagues and I refer to as dealing but not feeling.
Feeling but not feeling. Wow. So they look calm, but inside they're revved up.
Precisely. This often stems from mothers who dislike physical touch, maybe struggle to snuggle or hold their children, failing to create those pleasurable reciprocal rhythms that build secure attachment. Such early experiences can lead to low body confidence, a profound sense of inadequacy, a feeling of being not enough, and a deep fear of taking on certain roles or risks later in life.
It all connects back to that early need for safety and connection.
Absolutely. These behaviors, whether overt aggression, social withdrawal, or constant fawning, are all deeply ingrained attempts, often unconscious, to navigate perceived threats and secure some form of safety or belonging in a world that felt fundamentally unsafe or unpredictable. This concept of unseen forces brings us back to Jung's powerful insights. As we discussed earlier, the archetypal material of the unconscious is a great unknown that can profoundly influence us, guiding our reactions in ways that transcend our personal history.
Right, these aren't just individual memories, they're like universal patterns.
Exactly. Ideas that existed before any individual's narrative, almost like software programs pre-installed in the human psyche. Consider the concept of the terrible mother.
The terrible mother sounds intense.
It is. It's a powerful mythological figure found across diverse cultures and ancient stories. This archetype personifies profound anxiety, debilitating depression, and psychological chaos. It embodies the overwhelming, dangerous, devouring aspects of the unknown, the fear of being swallowed whole by life's difficulties. This archetypal figure represents the immense impersonal forces that can drive an individual toward either an expansion of consciousness, a heroic confrontation with the unknown that leads to growth, or, conversely, toward a painful contraction leading to withdrawal, despair, or even destructive behaviors. These are the deeper currents beneath our personal stories.
So these deeply rooted, often unconscious psychic forces are truly at play, shaping our inner landscape in ways we might not even recognize. It's a powerful idea that our internal myths, whether personal and shaped by early experience or universal and archetypal, profoundly guide our reactions and choices, often without our conscious awareness.
And this leads directly to a profound point the philosopher Ernest Becker made so eloquently. Humans are uniquely burdened by two great fears that other animals are largely protected from.
Two great fears. What are they?
He called them the fear of life and the fear of death.
Fear of life and death. Interesting.
Yes. These aren't just abstract philosophical concepts. These existential fears often lie beneath our overt anxieties, our everyday worries, and they drive many of our efforts to cope, sometimes in incredibly destructive ways. Our very creatureliness, our physical body, becomes a kind of curse of fate because it is inherently fallible, finite, and vulnerable to decay and death.
We know we're going to die, basically.
And that our bodies can fail us. We try to defy this body and its limitations by building up grand cultural projects and intricate psychological defense mechanisms. But when those defenses inevitably fail, the underlying terror of death and non-existence can be overwhelmingly present, even if we're not consciously aware of it. Many of our compulsive behaviors are, at their root, attempts to manage this underlying terror.
Wow, that's a heavy but really thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so these deeply rooted existential fears, the recalibrations in our nervous system we talked about, and these unconscious psychic forces, they inevitably lead us to seek some form of relief, right?
Naturally. We seek comfort, we seek escape from pain.
So how do those logical, albeit destructive coping mechanisms like addiction, chronic worry, or other compulsive behaviors really begin? What's the initial spark that turns a simple desire for relief into a long-term trap?
It's surprisingly simple at its core, yet profoundly impactful. Every craving is essentially a desire to change an internal state.
Change how you feel, basically.
Exactly. You don't truly crave the cigarette itself. You crave the feeling of temporary relief it provides from anxiety or boredom or discomfort. You don't actually want to turn on the TV for hours. You want the feeling of being entertained or maybe the escape from your own thoughts, from that nagging psychic pain.
The behavior is just the vehicle for the feeling.
Precisely. These habits, whether they involve substance use, overeating, gambling, excessive social media use, or even chronic worry, offer a seemingly immediate, albeit temporary, alteration of your internal state. They provide a quick, accessible escape from psychic pain, emotional distress, or that overwhelming sense of the unknown. The desired feeling comes first, then the behavior becomes a learned pathway to achieve that feeling, however fleetingly.
So it's a quick fix that often becomes a long-term trap. It starts as a logical attempt to feel better, to find comfort. But then the habit itself becomes the problem, adding another layer of struggle.
Precisely. Habits can be a powerful, double-edged sword. While good habits build momentum and positive change, bad ones entrench themselves, becoming deeper and harder to dislodge. And small changes, particularly positive ones, often seem insignificant in the short term.
Yeah, you don't see results right away.
Exactly, which leads to what's often called a valley of disappointment. You might make a few small shifts, say exercising for 15 minutes daily or meditating for 5, but because you don't see tangible immediate results like significant body changes or profound peace, it's incredibly frustrating.
So people give up.
Many give up too soon, yes, before they've reached the plateau of latent potential. This plateau is where the real, invisible, compounding power of habits kicks in.
Like compound interest for habits.
Kind of. It's like an ice cube warming from 25 to 31 degrees, no visible melt. But hit 32 degrees, and it transforms into water. Most people quit at 31, frustrated by the valley of disappointment, never realizing they were just 1 degree, one consistent small action, away from the plateau of latent potential where breakthroughs appear.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
Your negative patterns aren't necessarily about lacking willpower. They're often about misinterpreting this delayed feedback loop and giving up too soon. Bad habits repeat themselves, not because we genuinely don't want to change, but because we're operating with the wrong system for change, one that doesn't account for these delayed outcomes or the underlying drive for immediate relief.
This is fascinating, how our very sense of self, our identity, plays into this. It sounds like a deeper psychological resistance, almost like an internal tug of war.
Absolutely. This is what we call identity conflict, and it's arguably the biggest, most formidable barrier to positive change at any level, individual, team, or even society.
Identity conflict.
Okay. The more deeply a thought, an action, or a belief is tied to your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, the more incredibly difficult it is to change. If you've told yourself for years, I'm just not a morning person, or I'm the kind of person who struggles with impulse control, or maybe that's just not who I am when it comes to a particular behavior.
Right, you build a narrative about yourself.
Exactly. There's immense internal pressure, often unconscious, to maintain that self-image. People find whatever way they can to avoid contradicting themselves, even if it means clinging to things that make them deeply unhappy, while simultaneously devaluing or actively resisting the very opportunities, ideas, and habits that would genuinely free them and bring them peace.
So a part of us actually resists the very thing that could help us, precisely because it conflicts with our ingrained self-perception.
Yeah.
That's a profound hurdle to overcome when we're talking about making fundamental shifts.
Yes, it truly is. Our character defenses, which, remember, were originally built to help us cope with difficult realities and protect our fragile self-esteem in the face of life's terrors.
They served a purpose once.
They did, but they can paradoxically become an armor that holds us prisoner, a lifelong trap. The very techniques we develop to keep the overwhelming world at bay, to cut it down to a manageable size, eventually begin to choke the person himself.
Wow.
In a powerful sense, neurosis itself is the miscarriage of clumsy lies about reality. We become comfortable, almost complacent, in the prison of our character defenses, and the very idea of parole into the wider, more uncertain world of chance, genuine choice, and vulnerability can terrify us.
The safety mechanism becomes a cage.
That's a perfect way to put it. And these behaviors are often deeply ingrained, distorted attempts to find safety and control rooted in our early experiences, particularly our earliest relationships. Let's look at how this manifests in attachment styles, for instance, which profoundly shape how we seek and avoid intimacy.
Okay, attachment styles. Anxious and avoidant are the main ones people talk about, right?
Those are two key insecure styles, yes. Individuals with an anxious attachment style, for example, deeply crave intimacy and closeness. They might appear warm and eager for connection, but they're also exquisitely sensitive to even the smallest perceived threat to that closeness. A delayed text message, a brief moment of quiet, a partner needing space.
Hypersensitive to potential rejection.
Very much so. This sensitivity can lead to what are called protest behaviors, like increasing clinginess in the face of a partner's perceived distancing, demanding constant attention, being oversensitive to small slights or perceived rejections, or a constant, overwhelming preoccupation with the relationship itself.
Sounds exhausting for them and their partner.
It can be. They might even threaten to leave but never follow through or respond defensively and disproportionately to perceived rejections. Their attachment system is just super sensitive, activating rapidly, and making it incredibly hard to calm down without clear, explicit reassurance from their partner.
So they're acting out their fears of abandonment or rejection, often without realizing it. But it often has the opposite effect and inadvertently pushes people away, making their fears a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Precisely. Their actions, while driven by a desperate, often unconscious need for connection and reassurance, can inadvertently create the very distance they fear.
Okay, so what about the avoidant style?
On the other end of the spectrum, we have avoidant attachment styles. These individuals feel profoundly uncomfortable with too much intimacy, especially deep emotional closeness. They perceive it as a threat to their independence and self-sufficiency.
Intimacy feels engulfing to them.
It can, yes. So they employ what we call deactivating strategies to manage this discomfort. This could look like pulling away emotionally or physically when things are going well in a relationship.
Sabotaging it almost.
Sometimes unintentionally, yes. Or forming relationships with an impossible future, like with someone who is already married or emotionally unavailable. Or mentally checking out when their partner is talking about deep feelings, keeping secrets to maintain a feeling of independence and autonomy, or even subtly avoiding physical closeness.
Like not wanting to hold hands or cuddle.
Exactly. Things like not wanting to share the same bed, not holding hands, or maybe walking several strides ahead of their partner. They might appear aloof, frustrated, or angry, precisely because intimacy feels suffocating and threatening to their sense of self.
Like the person who gets furious about the toothpaste being squeezed from the middle? That's not really about the toothpaste, is it? It's often a subconscious way to create distance or assert control when intimacy feels overwhelming.
A perfect illustration. It's often a subtle, subconscious attempt to create distance and reduce perceived emotional intensity when intimacy feels overwhelming and threatens their sense of self-sufficiency.
So what happens when anxious and avoidant people get together?
Ah, yes, that's where it gets truly complex. When an anxious and avoidant person find themselves in a relationship, it creates what's known as an anxious avoidant trap.
The trap sounds ominous.
Well, their conflicting intimacy needs dominate all dialogue, all interactions. The anxious person seeks closeness. The avoidant person seeks distance. Arguments often remain unresolved, not because of a lack of effort, but because the very act of resolution, of truly working through an issue and achieving emotional closeness, brings too much intimacy for the avoidant partner.
So resolving the fight feels threatening to the avoidant person.
Exactly. The avoidant will often grow more hostile, shut down, and distant as an argument progresses, unconsciously avoiding the intimacy that resolution brings. This leads to a great deal of unhappiness, frustration, and misunderstanding for both individuals. It's a painful dance of approach and withdrawal that feels inescapable. Beyond these relational dynamics, trauma survivors often find their sensory world is largely off limits.
What does that mean, their sensory world?
It means that they unconsciously avoid certain physical sensations because they fear being hijacked by uncomfortable, overwhelming feelings that were present during the traumatic event.
Like a physical flashback trigger.
Sort of, yes. This can lead to compulsive eating or drinking as a way to numb or escape these internal sensations, or to completely avoiding social and intimate activities altogether because the vulnerability involved feels too dangerous. Even though the original trauma might be long in the past, their emotional brain keeps generating physiological sensations, a racing heart, shallow breath, tension that make them feel scared and helpless, driving these powerful avoidant behaviors.
This connects to chronic worry too, doesn't it?
Mhm.
It's another way the mind tries to control discomfort, almost like a mental ritual to ward off perceived danger.
Indeed. Chronic worry often doesn't lead to solutions or productive action. Instead, it becomes a kind of partial payoff.
Partial payoff. How so?
It's a pervasive, often unconscious way to ruminate on potential dangers and feel like you're actively doing something to prevent disaster, even if it only keeps you stuck in the same rut of thought, perpetually replaying dread and anxiety. You feel like you're controlling it by worrying, but you're just spinning your wheels.
Right, the worry itself becomes the habit.
Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that some individuals, often called repressors, can appear perfectly calm and collected on the surface, yet their bodies can be seething with significant physiological anxiety they are completely unaware of.
Seriously, they don't feel anxious, but their body shows it.
Yes, their bodies are agitated with a racing heart, sweaty palms, climbing blood pressure, even as they sincerely report feeling perfectly fine and relaxed. This powerfully illustrates how deeply unconscious these coping mechanisms can be, and how disconnected we can become from our own embodied experience. Some compulsive behaviors, especially those that appear self-sabotaging or maybe highly unusual, can also be understood as desperate attempts to assert individuality or regain a twisted sense of control when one feels profoundly powerless.
Protesting through behavior.
In a way, in some extreme cases, these can be seen as protests out of weakness rather than strength. For instance, when an individual feeling profoundly powerless or unable to form a healthy, stable identity through typical relational means, unconsciously attempts to assert a twisted form of control or individuality through unconventional behaviors.
Like acting out in strange ways.
It can manifest like that. This freedom or assertion of self is less about true strength and more about deep anxiety over feeling consumed or annihilated by their own physicality, their deep needs, or the overwhelming demands of the world. It often stems from a fundamental lack of secure body confidence or a secure sense of self developed in childhood, leading to an inability to embrace the purely human, animal side of one's nature.
So whether it's avoiding intimacy, clinging for reassurance, developing compulsive behaviors like overeating or addiction, or getting trapped in chronic worry, these are all intricate, often unconscious ways our psyche tries to cope. To gain a sense of safety, control, or temporary relief, even when the ultimate outcome isn't what we consciously desire or is actively destructive to our long-term well-being.
Exactly. It's a testament to the powerful, often unseen forces at play within us, guiding our choices from the depths of our history. So the fundamental issue in resolving traumatic stress, and consequently in breaking free from these destructive repetitive patterns, is really to restore the proper balance between our rational thinking brain, that calm CEO, the MPFC, and our emotional reactive brain, the amygdala, our smoke detector.
Getting them working together again.
Precisely. The overarching goal is to feel truly in charge of how you respond to life's challenges and how you conduct your daily life. When we're triggered by past trauma, we often get pushed outside our window of tolerance.
The window of tolerance instead of zone.
It's that optimal range of functioning where we feel regulated, calm, and able to think clearly. Outside this window, we can become either hyper-aroused, leading to reactivity, disorganization, easy startling panic attacks, or uncontrollable rages.
Okay, too revved up.
Or we become hyper-aroused, feeling numb, shut down, sluggish, our thinking impaired, maybe unable to even get out of a chair.
Too shut down.
Exactly. Healing is fundamentally about returning to and learning to remain consistently within that window so you can engage with life spontaneously, authentically, and mindfully, rather than being stuck in a state of hypervigilance or disconnected numbness.
And this is precisely why we emphasized up front that this deep dive isn't therapy itself. It's about providing you with understanding and a comprehensive framework for what's happening beneath the surface, which is, such a crucial first step in any healing journey.
Absolutely.
We need to know what you're truly dealing with to name these unseen forces before you can effectively address them.
Exactly. Understanding is the precondition, the crucial map for the terrain ahead. And then the actual, often arduous work of healing trauma is an enormous challenge that absolutely requires finding safe spaces where you can express your pain, your fear, your rage, without judgment.
Safe spaces are key.
Absolutely critical. This is why survivor groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and various other support groups can be so critical and profoundly effective. They offer a responsive, empathetic community where people can tell their truth, often for the first time, and find that crucial sense of belonging and shared understanding, realizing they are not alone in their struggle.
That connection must be incredibly powerful.
It is. Beyond that, professional therapists are essential, especially those who are truly trauma-informed and, importantly, have done their own therapeutic work.
Why is it important they've done their own work?
Because it ensures they can remain emotionally available, present, and regulated themselves, even when confronted with agonizing details and intense emotions like rage, despair, or revulsion from their patients. They provide the consistent, safe, and expertly guided environment for people to share their overwhelming experiences and begin to process them in a way that leads to integration.
It truly sounds like it's about being profoundly heard and deeply seen, not just by others who understand, but also by oneself, recognizing that the body is the bridge to these experiences. It's about bringing that inner, often fragmented experience into a coherent external story that can finally be understood.
Yes, that moment when the public story, the way we present ourselves and our history to the world, and our inner experience, our raw, often dissociated feelings and memories, finally meet and align, is a profoundly powerful part of the healing process.
Connecting the inside and the outside.
Exactly. And scientifically, methods like EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, have shown powerful positive outcomes, especially for processing stuck traumatic memories from single event traumas in adults.
EMDR, yeah, I've heard good things about that. How does it work, basically?
Well, what's unique and incredibly effective about EMDR is that it allows individuals to relive an event with all its original physical and emotional intensity, to feel the fear, smell the smells, hear the sounds, while simultaneously observing it from their present adult perspective, anchored in safety. This bilateral stimulation, the eye movements or tapping, helps the brain to relearn and integrate the experience, transforming it from a relived event that feels current into a remembered one that clearly belongs to the past.
So it helps file the memory correctly.
That's a good way to think about it. It's strong evidence that the brain can relearn, adapt, and heal. And from a broader societal perspective, this highlights how incredibly important it is to attend to psychological needs alongside purely medical ones, a critical blind spot that has, unfortunately, persisted in much of modern medicine. Beyond seeking professional help, cultivating new, healthier systems and habits is crucial for long-term growth and self-regulation. And the first and most vital step toward improving yourself, toward making those unconscious forces conscious, is becoming truly aware of your current habits, especially those non-conscious and automatic ones that run on autopilot.
Back to Jung's idea, making the unconscious conscious.
Exactly. As he wisely said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. We need a kind of point-and-call system for our personal lives, much like a pilot might do a pre-flight checklist. A simple habit scorecard where you merely list out your daily behaviors, from waking up and checking your phone, to making tea, to how you respond to stress, can be incredibly illuminating.
Just noticing what you actually do.
Yes. This level of granular awareness is the essential foundation upon which all other positive changes are built, because you truly can't improve what you don't first acknowledge.
That makes perfect sense. Once you're aware of the patterns, you can start to intervene to disrupt them. So what's the next step after shining a light on those often unconscious behaviors?
The next crucial step involves consciously designing your environment to support the habits you want to build, and, just as importantly, to make the bad ones harder to do.
Changing your surroundings.
This means making the cues for positive habits obvious and visible, placing them directly in your line of sight. For instance, if you want to read more, put the book on your pillow. If you want to drink more water, keep a full water bottle on your desk.
Make the good choice easy.
Exactly. And conversely, you want to make the cues for bad habits invisible, or at the very least, exceptionally difficult to access. For example, if you find yourself watching too much television mindlessly, you might unplug it after each use, or even take the batteries out of the remote and put them in a drawer.
Add friction to the bad habits.
Precisely. Adding even a small amount of friction, like taking an extra 10 seconds to turn on the TV, can be enough to prevent mindless negative behaviors. The greater the friction, the less likely the bad habit is to occur. It's about engineering your world to support your desired self. Now, when it comes to actually starting new habits, it's incredibly easy to get excited and try to do too much too soon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Go all in, then burn out.
Exactly. Leading directly to that valley of disappointment we talked about earlier. We aim for perfection from day one and crash. The most effective way to counteract this tendency to build consistency and momentum is to adopt what's called the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule. Okay, what's that?
This rule states that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So if your goal is to read more, your 2-minute rule might be read 1 page.
Just 1 page. That's manageable.
Right. If it's to run every day, it might be put on your running shoes. If it's to eat healthier, it could be eat 1 piece of fruit.
Lower the barrier to entry drastically.
Exactly. This incredibly simple rule overcomes the initial excitement and inertia, making the new behavior so easy, so non-threatening, that you literally can't say no. It's about making the good habit the path of least resistance, stringing together enough successful attempts until the behavior is firmly embedded and feels natural, like an inevitable part of your day. Beyond just external actions and habit formation, the pursuit of mastery, which fundamentally requires deep engagement and consistent effort, is absolutely crucial for psychological well-being and integration.
Mastery, like getting really good at something.
Yes. Think about it. Competence itself is the best defense against the helplessness that defines trauma. When you feel competent, when you genuinely master a skill, you feel in control, you feel capable, which directly counteracts that profound, debilitating feeling of powerlessness.
That makes a lot of sense. Building confidence through skill.
Whether it's mastering a complex skill at work, excelling in a new hobby like painting or coding, or even just becoming really good at managing your daily tasks and responsibilities, building competence is incredibly healing. It redirects your energy outwards into productive action rather than inwards into rumination or self-defeating patterns.
This connects beautifully to the concept of flow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That state where you're so immersed in an activity that time seems to disappear and you lose yourself completely in the task.
Exactly. Flow, as described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is a psychological state of pure bliss and intense, effortless concentration. It's when your brain quiets down, reducing the activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-consciousness and planning.
Your inner critic shuts up for a bit.
Pretty much, yes. Allowing you to tackle challenging tasks with a minimum expenditure of mental effort. In flow, you temporarily lose your sense of self-consciousness, becoming one with the activity. There's no room for self-doubt or rumination.
Sounds amazing.
It is, and here's the powerful paradox. Afterward, when the activity is over and self-consciousness resumes, your self emerges stronger, enriched by new skills, fresh achievements, and a profound sense of accomplishment. Achieving this unity with one's surroundings, where attention is fully focused away from internal disorder, lessens the destructive effects of stress and what we call psychic entropy.
Psychic entropy, like mental chaos.
Exactly, that feeling of internal disorder, mental clutter, and a fragmented, scattered mind. Flow is the opposite of that. It brings mental clarity and calm. It's a powerful way to direct attention away from internal disorder and the ruminations of the past. However, achieving flow consistently isn't passive. It requires determination, discipline, and continually developing your skills, pushing yourself just to the edge of your abilities, a balanced challenge.
So it takes effort to get into that effortless state.
It does. It's not a relaxed, laissez-faire approach, but one of deliberate, challenging, and purposeful engagement.
So it's not just about changing what you do or the specific habits you enact, but fundamentally changing who you are at your core. It's a deeper, more profound shift in self-perception and identity.
Precisely. The most effective and sustainable way to change your habits, to truly make them stick and become integrated into your being, is to focus not just on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become.
Focus on identity, not just outcome.
Exactly. Your identity emerges directly out of your habits. It's not something you decide once and for all. Every single action you take, no matter how small, is a vote for the type of person you wish to be.
Every action is a vote. I like that.
When you truly own a new commitment, for example, accepting that you need to seek help for past trauma and taking that first brave step of calling a therapist, it generates new internal reasons that powerfully reinforce this new self-image. This makes the change stick even when external motivators like initial enthusiasm or external pressure are removed.
The internal motivation takes over.
Yes. This is embracing a growth mindset. The deep foundational belief in your own potential to change, develop, and learn, rather than seeing your abilities or character as fixed, unchangeable traits.
It's almost like a psychological inoculation, protecting you by building internal resilience from the inside out.
It is. For example, teaching emotional literacy to children from an early age can effectively inoculate them against many future psychological struggles. It helps them develop the emotional repertoire necessary to identify, articulate, and handle life's challenges, fostering the core skills of self-soothing and self-regulation.
Giving them the tools early on.
Exactly. And for adults interacting with children, recognizing that challenging behaviors, especially in children, are often frustrated attempts to communicate distress, a plea for help or connection, can fundamentally shift our approach from punishment to support and understanding, This understanding, in turn, helps those children to develop that essential body confidence, that sense of internal safety, and a more secure sense of self, equipping them for a more resilient future. So the journey of healing and growth is really about understanding that while attachment styles, forged by our past experiences, tend to be quite stable and deeply ingrained.
They feel fixed sometimes.
They do, but they are also wonderfully plastic. This means they can change, given the right conditions and consistent effort. Studies have shown that security priming, that is, intentionally recalling past positive relational experiences, or even being inspired by secure role models in your life, even fictional ones.
Like thinking about someone who made you feel safe.
Exactly. That can nudge individuals toward more secure patterns of relating. As a person's attachment style gradually changes toward greater security, they behave more constructively in relationships, experience less anxiety, and even enjoy better mental and physical health.
So change is possible, even with these deep patterns.
It's a powerful affirmation that we are absolutely not condemned to repeat the patterns of our past. We have the capacity for transformation.
That's a profound thought.
Yeah.
We're not defined by our past experiences, those imprints of trauma or early relationships, but we can actively integrate them into a stronger, more resilient present. It's not about erasing what happened because that's impossible, but transforming how those experiences live within us.
Indeed. The heroic path, in a psychological sense, isn't about avoiding chaos, denying pain, or pretending the past didn't happen.
It's not about building higher walls.
No, it's rather about voluntarily confronting it. It requires accepting the inevitable psychological disruption and discomfort that comes with truly facing those unresolved issues, those hidden fragments of self. But through that voluntary confrontation, that brave engagement with the unknown within, we open ourselves to new discovery, profound reconstruction, and genuine advancement of self.
Facing the dragon, so to speak.
In a way, yes. The genius, for instance, is often the fortunate hero who voluntarily faces the unexpected consequences of their insufficiently adaptive behavior, learning and transforming through that engagement. The critical difference between suffering endlessly in chaos and genuinely thriving through it often lies in whether we run away from what thrives on neglect and grows larger in the dark, or whether we voluntarily face the unexpected, integrate it, and transform it into wisdom.
So it's about actively engaging with our inner world. Just as a genius might engage with a complex problem they're determined to solve, rather than letting it consume us. It's a conscious, deliberate choice to become the explorer of our own psyche, to bravely journey into our own depths.
Exactly. The ultimate goal isn't to erase the past, to forget it ever happened, or to pretend it didn't wound us. It's to absorb it, with all its horror and pain, into a coherent, horrifying, yet understandable narrative.
Turning experience into a story that makes sense.
Yes. When our public story, the way we present ourselves and our history to the world, and our inner experience, our raw, often dissociated feelings and memories, finally meet and align, it fosters deep, authentic healing. This profound integration allows us to create meaning in our lives, meaning that transcends mere survival, by aligning our actions with a purpose that justifies our strivings. It's about making profound sense of the chaos and finding a clear, strong direction forward, moving from fate to conscious choice.
A powerful call to action for everyone listening. What personal narratives are you holding on to that might be unconsciously keeping you from engaging with the unknown parts of your potential, or from fully integrating the experiences that have shaped you into who you are today?
It's a great question to ponder. This journey of integrating our past is an ongoing process of discovery and growth, continuously expanding our consciousness and transforming our understanding of self and the world. It's a continuous editing of our beliefs and an upgrading of our identity, leading to a richer, more meaningful life.
A truly hopeful message. Thank you. Join us next time for the season finale of The Deep Dive, where we'll explore what it truly means to be a purpose maximizer and how that can shape not just our individual lives, but our collective future.